Hey everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're here to talk about episode 10 of Vampire Dormitory. I hate to be the one who says, I told you so, but I predicted that Mito's decision not to tell anybody the truth about who she actually was something that would eventually end up biting her on the ass. And I have to admit that I have been 100% correct about this over and over and over and over again. Even when she ended up with somebody who did find out the truth about her through Len, we realized that because she didn't consciously choose that person, because she didn't think it through, because she hasn't considered the possibilities of what could happen to her by keeping the secret away from all of her friends, she's actually placed herself in a situation where now that something understandably inconceivable has happened to her, she really doesn't have anyone that she can go to for help or for support or to actually help her deal with this situation, and that is a really bad thing. Something else that I did want to point out that I didn't say last week, as far as I know, is the reality that Len did something that's even worse than what I initially thought, because when I was thinking about it this week, I realized that what Len actually did is Len didn't want and doesn't want her to turn into a vampire and to belong to Ruka or to be with Ruka, and yet he had no qualms in changing her gender and her sex without her consent, and he is doing so with the intent that she is going to be with him, which makes him an absolute and utter hypocrite. I was already mad enough at him, but the way he behaved in this week's episode just cemented everything that I thought. And again, I'm very impressed with the fact that this show actually had the balls to take their other leading man and turn him into an actual direct enemy at this point in the show, rather than dragging out the love triangle to the bitter end and having half of the people who liked one of the guys be like, what the hell happened? The commitment and willingness to actually take one of the guys and legitimately make him a villain is actually quite refreshing. Despite the fact that I liked Len and that I was very upset at the time, from a writing perspective, it's something we don't see every day. We usually see these things get dragged out and both guys being a decent choice and then one getting picked and then half of the fans getting mad. So this decision to invest in honesty, which is actually very ironic coming from this show, is really interesting. The next thing that we need to talk about, especially as we are talking about Len and his behavior and everything that was going on, is the distinction between how Len is handling rejection. Although Mito hasn't been quite as crystal clear as she probably needs to, he seems to think that he has her, he's going to have her, what he's done is guaranteed that he's going to have her, etc. And I don't think that's the case. Even if he were to win, I still don't think that's the case, and we'll get to that. But I really am impressed with the distinction between how he handled all of this, as I've been saying here. And then when we look at what's going on with Juri and what's going on with Takara, because Juri finally confesses his feelings to Takara in this episode during the super cute culture festival thing that they had with all the haunted house and the Halloween themes, which was fantastic. I really loved the design of that. They really captured a mood there. But getting back to the core topic at hand, I really admired the fact that even though Takara didn't actually end up coming back and confirming one way or another how he felt, he's kind of left us hanging. Juri has taken the assumption that Takara is not interested, the exact same opposite of what Len is doing to Mito. And not only does he recognize that Takara, in his mind at least, is not interested, Juri is actually taking an opposite next step to what Len is doing in trying to find somebody suitable to be with Takara, because he knows Takara does want a girlfriend, or at least a partner. We'll see whether it ends up being a girlfriend or whether he ends up going for Team Bi. We'll see how that goes. But my key point is that we see how much that it's actually hurting Juri. And I mean, generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend doing this. I wouldn't recommend doing what Len is doing either, to be 1000% clear. Often in these kinds of situations, which admittedly are very painful, somebody needs to step away and to actually gain clarity. And neither of these characters are doing that. They're both doing the two opposite extremes. But I admire Juri's determination to try and help Takara and to try and like make his life better. To me, although I don't necessarily think it's the most healthy thing Juri could be doing for himself, it's a much better symbolism of what it means to love another person, to put their needs, their wants, and their desires before yours. We can't do that all the time, we're only human, but the willingness and ability to consider what your partner or your desired partner wants and needs, and to think about that, is actually really important. And the parallel between the two characters and what they're doing right now is fascinating. And of course, the last key thing we need to talk about is the reality that the black cat that's been trailing Mito all this time has actually somehow been able to transform into a copy of Mito. I don't know whether the cat needed something, maybe Mito's blood or something that she got from Len. I don't know for sure on that one. That's me guessing and filling in technicals. I don't know whether she could have turned into Mito on her own, or whether that spell or that skill or whatever that Len used in the last episode was needed to make this happen. I don't know whether Len knows that this girl is following Mito. I don't know whether Len knows that this girl is, hypothetically at least, or potentially from what we've seen in the episode, trying to kill Mito. Is that the father's influence and Len has nothing to do with it? Is that Len accepting that Mito is not going to love him and going, if I can't have you, no one will? I'm not sure exactly where we're going with this yet. There are definitely speculations, as I've been saying, but they are not confirmed. All I know is that this is actually giving me very serious Ursula turning into Vanessa from The Little Mermaid vibes. When I saw the cat turn into the girl, I was just like, no, 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 no. And it's really interesting because it seems to me that what we're trying to have be accomplished here is to see whether or not Ruka will actually be able to recognize who his true mate is, as opposed to just viewing things simply on appearances, which is interesting because it seems to shift back and forth, and we seem to be getting a bunch of misinformation about whether vampires would accept a male-male relationship, even if that had happened to end up being the case. We still don't know whether or not Mito can actually be turned back into a girl. I think there was some implication of it being possible when she was talking to Len, and rather that he was not willing to do that because it would mean she would be with Ruka. But we'll see what happens there. I really do wonder what exactly will go down with this, because the ability to understand and recognize your partner is a key aspect of love, and if Ruka can't do that, that is a serious problem. I mean, nobody would expect this kind of mind reading or this kind of head games in the real world, but in a fictional context, it actually makes perfect sense, and the symbolism is actually really quite brilliant. I'm actually very impressed with how this show is doing. The pacing of it earlier in the season was much more chill and much more slow, but these newer episodes, while they are obviously freaking out parts of the community and definitely upsetting some people, are definitely not boring, and personally I find myself enjoying what's going on, even with the fact that my guy Len got done dirty as far as the writing and did dirty as far as his character. But definitely some really interesting things happening here. That ending, though, with the shattering orange heart and Mito potentially falling toward her death is shocking, and it actually ties back to what we saw at the start of the season, where we saw her falling off of the bridge and potentially falling to her death there as well. I wonder what we will see at the start of the next episode. Even if something happens and either Ruka can save her or somebody else swoops in and does so, is there actually some form of true emotional damage that has been done to this girl in this situation? Was that orange heart shattering symbolic of something actual and literal as far as her emotional state? Or was it something simply there to give us some sort of context as the viewer? I think that's going to end up being a worthwhile question going forward. Either way, I've super enjoyed this episode. It was very interesting, and I'd love to know what you guys thought about it, so feel free to leave a comment below and let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Talk to you later. Bye!